We are 5 days away from the Major League Baseball trade deadline, and the Cardinals are on a 2-game win streak. And this is Card Central 365 on STL Sports Central, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook and, of course, Gray Bar. I'm Matthew Rocchio. That's Brenden Schaeffer, and we've got a lot of Cardinals baseball to talk about. Maybe not so much inside the white lines. They did get a win last night, but plenty to talk about around the league and around the Cardinals clubhouse. B-Shafe, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. Really leaning into the 2-game win streak. They're back, baby. It's time to buy, right? Time to buy.
Listen, if you can make fun of me for that one, but I saw your thread. I saw your poll that you had out on the X this morning talking about if they should still move everybody if they do in fact pull off another 2 wins this weekend. I saw what you're doing out there.
I'm a chaos agent.
Of course, and I'm with you. I think it would be absolutely hilarious to see what happens there. But right off the bat, we're going to dive into a conversation that has picked up a lot of steam in the last 3 or 4 days. Me and Randy Carricker batted it around in a couple different scenarios, a couple different contexts over the last few days on the morning show here on STL Sports Central. We've talked about it and touched on it in different Card Central editions as well. The chatters have come in and jumped in with the conversation as well. And of course, as always, whenever we're live on STL Sports Central, make sure you jump into the chat. We'll get those comments up there, react to whatever you want to talk about. Your reactions as this Donovan potential trade conversation has progressed among the fans, but also throwing in the progression among the reporting. John Heyman yesterday reporting that the Yankees were interested. Now we have Katie Woo saying that it would take a lot, but the Cardinals will listen about Brendan Donovan.
Right, which the thing that bugged me about the Heyman tweet is like, whoa, the Yankees would be interested in Donovan, but it's unclear the extent to which, the Cardinals sell-off is going to take place. And it's like, yeah, every team should be interested in Donovan if the Cardinals are going to move him. Katie adding a little more context of like, look, here's where they stand on it. It's going to take a huge haul. They're not close to moving any of the position players that they've gotten calls about. But the Dodgers are definitely a team that you could kind of picture a match happening there. Like if the threshold is the Cardinals would need a big haul for him, and it's known that the Dodgers reported by their athletic beat writer saying that they're making relief pitching like the top of the list in terms of what they're looking to do at the deadline. But they'd also like a left-handed bat that can play the outfield. It's like, if the Cardinals and Dodgers don't make a trade, what are we doing here? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean Donovan. I think it's a shame right now that Lars Nootbaar is on the injured list, because that would feel like an obvious piece that for the Cardinals, this year has been about finding out about some guys and, where their futures may come. Is it an extension for a guy like Brendan Donovan? Is it a contract extension for a guy like Nootbaar? Well, Nootbaar, I think, is more on the side of the durability has always been the concern with him, and it's happening again. And so maybe not so much on the extension front when it comes to Lars Nootbaar. Like, we just haven't seen enough necessarily this year to be into that. Would that mean then that you would go the other direction and trade him? He's on the injured list, so I don't know how interesting he would be right now to a team like the Dodgers. But, if not for that fact, you could maybe look in his direction when it comes to these two teams matching up. Of course, they're going to ask about Donovan first. Donovan's been reliable. Donovan could play corner outfield. Donovan was an all-star this year. There's a lot to like. Both players would have team control. I just think if you're the Cardinals, the haul would have to be tremendous. But could you see a world in which they're calling about Donnie? You've got these relievers. You package a closer like a Helsley, or maybe it's a JoJo, or it's a Maton, or it's a Steven Matz to the Dodgers for upgrading the type of prospects, or even like major league players, like a Dalton Rushing. I don't know if he'd be interesting to the Cardinals. They got plenty of catchers, but he can play outfield as well. Are there some guys for that organization that, long-term control would be compelling? I'm on the side of, doesn't make sense to me to trade Donovan, because I don't believe this is a 3 to 5 year rebuild that we're looking at with the St. Louis Cardinals. But there's a lot of fans who ardently disagree with me on that. And so the philosophy of all of this, you could say we're having a philosophical difference, me and the fan base right now, is interesting to kind of dive into.
On that point, I think we should also, like, we need to have the correct context of these conversations. Like, it doesn't matter what you and I want. It matters what the organization thinks is their window to contend. And the organization thinks 2027. So that's how we have to.
But what do they think about 2026? What is 2026 if 2027 is their year?
That's a very good question. That one, I don't know. I don't have the answer for that one as well. But I'm just saying is we can contextualize some of these conversations about the contention window, and it doesn't matter what you think or what I think or what the fans think. We know that that's kind of what they're building towards, and so we can use that for a little bit of context.
Okay.
Putting here in the chat, and the chat's getting rolling here. If Donnie gets a top power right-hand bat and a pitcher, maybe. I just don't know if like the factors. There's a lot of factors that give Brendan Donovan a lot of value. Obviously, when you look at his production the last couple seasons, when you talk, his entire career, he's a 117 OPS plus player. The last 2 years, though, this year he's almost hitting 300. He's got versatility in the field, and obviously because he's where he's contractually at, you can lock him up to a pretty solid deal. I don't think he's, Mason Windu's also asking like what kind of extension projections. I don't think a team with real money would balk at giving him like 4 and 32, and I don't think he would have any issue with that.
I think you can go longer than that even. I think
that's fair.
Year is, with then an option even on the back end, I think is totally fine. You buy out the last 2 years of ARB, and then 2 to 3 to maybe 4 if you're talking options free agent years, I think seems totally reasonable for a guy who, he'll be 33, 34 by the time you wrap up on an extension of that ilk. I don't think that would be problematic at all.
I don't think you need to get, and like Mason Windu says, he had the exact same term that you went with, 5 years and then a 6-year option. I don't think you need to give him $65 million necessarily to get. I don't think you need to average up to maybe get up to 10 just to make him happy. But I mean, I don't know if the Cardinals are willing to give him that deal. Like there's a lot of factors for me as to why Brendan Donovan has a lot of value. I do question though, is do teams inherently have the same value for a 28-year-old with under 2,000 plate appearances? Like, is there a factor of like how long? Like, do other teams believe in giving him a 4-year deal and that he's going to be productive from ages 31 to 33? Or is that something, the conversation changes when he's already been in your locker room and you know what he is and things like that?
Yeah, whether that like with Edman, right? You can draw some comparisons that they took him on and then he had a great postseason and everything, and then they extended him, right? I think that was the timing of that. And so you can certainly push those conversations. If a guy's traded in July when he's got 2 years of term remaining, you can push those conversations to the offseason for sure. By the way, very, very deft maneuvering here that you change the camera angle to make my head look larger than yours. That is the only time that's ever going to happen. Just had to throw that in there. Yes. So like I am in Mason Windu, the 5 and 65. Absolutely. That is the type of contract I would be happy to do. And look, I don't know the numbers. The agents are going to know the numbers. If they're like, no, it's actually more like this, I'll say, whatever, done. Like, that's not a prohibitive contract, no matter what it ends up being. Mm-hmm. I just don't see that it would be the type of deal that I balk at. It's safe. It really does strike me as a safe type of contract. And is he going to like crazy outperform it? Maybe. Like if he goes on a Ben Zobrist run for 3-4 years, you're going to look back at a contract like that and go, oh, perfectly good deal. And I also don't agree with this assertion that, well, the Cardinals should trade him because they're not going to win while he's here. Like he's not going to be a part of it the next time that they win. People are very comfortable pretending that they can predict the future and they know, how many years it's going to be and what the record's going to be last year. They talk about this team like they're a 100-loss team. They lost 91 games in 23 under some very unique circumstances. They immediately turned it around and won 83. This year, they're on pace to win 84, 85, whatever it is, 83, in that range. And, they're probably going to do it. And so for me, what's interesting is this idea that they're not going to be able to continue on a trajectory that moves them forward, like beyond just the middle ground, without taking a big step back in the standings. I don't think you need to do that. Like they've had the draft picks associated with the step back already. A Weatherholt at 7, a Liam Doyle at number 5 overall. Like they don't need to draft in the top 10 for 3 more years in order to turn it around. They've got new front office people coming in to hopefully do more with the assets they have than what the previous regime did. Like that to me is going to have to be a big part of this development for sure. Identifying talent and bringing it in for sure. But like just the idea that you can trade assets for other assets other than just the very specific circumstances under which John Mozeliak's front office has been able to do that. Hopefully there's a little bit more maneuverability with when Chaim Bloom comes in, and you can do what they failed to do. You've got 3 or 4 left-handed hitting corner outfield types. Find a way to turn one of those, package some guys with them, but you turn that into a pitcher. Like you make the types of moves that can progress you forward. That's what I would be looking for the front office to do. And I don't think you have to lose a bunch of games in 26, 27 to do that. And by 28, for sure, the Cardinals should be competing, right? If Hein Bloom's front office is doing what we hope it'll do. So why are we acting like Brendan Donovan won't be here when a contract extension for him is a completely reasonable approach? And do not give me that, well, J.J. Weatherholt's coming, so you don't need Donovan. That's not the way the world works. No, J.J. Weatherholt's coming, so you don't need Gorman. J.J. Weatherholt's coming, so you don't need Newport. Like,
okay, let's transition to that really quick, because that was a conversation me and Randy were having. So let's put the 4 lefties you have, and we'll keep Donnie in there because people are throwing him out there. So you have Newt, Donnie, Gorman, and Burleson. So my thing is balancing that all these players are going to have different values in the trade market and values to your team. And also, I think player profile is important because, and this has been Randy's big thing about the Gorman factor, is like, you want to trade Gorman, but he's the 130 home run power profile guy in the organization right now. So like balancing all those things, what do you think is the best move? What you think would be the best move for both roster and for actually getting things back? Because Nootbaar's an easy trade. It opens up an outfield spot. A lot of teams are going to like him for his contract, but you're not going to get the value you're getting from a Brendan Donovan or a Gorman or a Burleson that you would get from Nootbaar necessarily. And even Burleson for me is a wonder because he has one incredible skill, and that he's going to get the bat on the ball, but he doesn't, again, profile more than a 20, 22, 25 home run hitter necessarily from what we've seen so far. And so, do you roll with that instead of a Gorman? What do you think about all of those 4 players?
You let other teams guide that conversation. Like, what are teams are going to call you. You can call teams. You can say what Josh is mentioning. Have I mentioned Reed Detmers yet? Yeah, let me mention Reed Detmers again. I think that the Cardinals should trade for him. I think the Cardinals should trade for him this week. A left-hander. Like, imagine you could trade JoJo Romero because teams go, wow, he's a lockdown late inning lefty and he's got team control for next year. Okay, you're getting a piece back for him. You're going separately and trading. I don't know that the Angels would want one of your lefty bats from your outfield, but if they did, or if you found a match that they could, you're coming to them, hey, we want Reed Detmers. What do you want? Okay, let them guide that conversation, because I would move Gorman in a conversation. I would move Nootbaar in a conversation. I would move, like, Burleson's a little bit trickier. You mentioned that's the one skill. I think reliably he's going to be a good solid bat for you, but you have good solid bats potentially. You don't have, guys that could. I know that Detmers is maybe a risk because he's not really done it consistently as a starter, but could he come in and be like your JoJo for the rest of the year? But then when you get to February, you get Rob Cerfolio and Matt Pierpont and Dusty Blake, and they get their hands on him, and they're like, here's how you're going to be a starter now. And like, we can do what the Angels were not able to do with you. And like, if you don't believe the Cardinals have the people in place to be able to do that, then fine. But what are we doing if we don't trust the people that Hein Bloom has brought in? Like, we're in year 1 of this crew. So I'm going to, suspend my disbelief a little bit and say, yeah, they're probably pretty decent at their job and what they're able to do in the guys that they're going to be able to bring in with this. So that's the type of thing that I would be looking to do. And it takes talent to get talent. But in terms of like prioritizing, Donovan is the only one in a different tier for me of all of them. And like, you didn't even name him, so good job. He's the only one that I'm like looking at differently with that, where like the team said, we say, hey, I want this guy. What do you want? Of our left-handed hitting, you need a left-handed hitting outfielder. What do you want? Well, I want Donovan. No, the other ones from the other 4. And like, does one have more value than another? Sure, probably. But I'll be malleable enough when it comes to Gorman and Nootbaar and Burleson, a little bit more value than the other 2 because of team control. But otherwise, yeah, I'm gonna be willing to move and maneuver with that crew. But I'm extending Donovan because I am not of the mind that Cardinals fans will have to wait till 2028 to be any good. There's no reason they can't have a creative, bold, and active off season, which could maybe start this week, and turn things into something that next year, instead of winning 83 like they're going to win this year, or they're on pace to win this year, you win 88. You don't have to lose 95 first. I don't know. I just don't understand. I know people don't want to be in the middle. I disagree with their premise over how you get out of the middle and what needs to happen and how reliably you can expect after you lose 95. Well, we lost our 95. We've paid our dues. Now we get to win 100. That's not the way it works. You have to do things effectively, but you can do things effectively without attempting to lose on purpose and waiting 3 years to win.
Is one of the reasons you're okay with trading Gorman, because there's two thought processes to being okay with that being the move. Okay. Because one, you just don't buy into the belief that there's some equation you have for the Cardinals to have enough power hitting. That's one thing. Or two, it's that the inevitable big free agent move, other than maybe pitching in the next 2 years, if they want to, compete in 2027, would be a right-handed power bat. So when you look at the projection of 2027, are you just not worried about the prospect of having a team that doesn't have a 30 home run hitter? Or are you saying the Cardinals find that with the right-handed power bat, and then when you combine that with all these other solid hitters, you have a Giants-esque lineup where it's 5 or 6 guys who are all hitting 15 to 20, and that's enough power to take you through to a major league level competitive, level?
Yeah, the Giants-esque lineup thing is probably closer to how I view it, where like eventually you do want to get the one thing, but we don't know what the one thing is yet. Like if we're talking about it we're saying after 2026, they're going to go get it, which by the way, after 2026, there's going to be a work stoppage. So, they'll wait until after that dust settles, in my opinion, to sign a big contract with somebody. But that's 2 years down the road where you're like, okay, we have a better idea of who stayed, who went, what we have, and then you can kind of understand a little bit better what position is a big splash in free agency going to come from. The power thing in and of itself is a good point, but I also look at it and say, like, are you sure that Gorman is that anyway to this team? Like, I as a skill, I value the fact that he hits for power, but if you take it with the back's always going to act up, the consistency is not going to be there. Like, is it okay that I'm not getting the world for Gorman? Sometimes you make a trade and it's just moving to clear space. Sometimes you make a trade because you're getting the most value. It feels like Nootbaar could be the best of both worlds. If Gorman lands in that trade lands closer to the side of we're clearing space, that is something that I can live with, even though you don't have the power profile from elsewhere, because I'm just not 100% certain that I'm not 100% certain that we don't get another 12 months down the road and we're still having the same conversation with Gorman OPSing around 700. Like, if the power is the one thing he does, that's great, but I think the aggregate is stronger if I can put somebody in that lineup spot. And like that might be where the JJ replacement happens, right? If Gorman plays 600 plate appearances, if he can stay healthy enough to do it, and he hits 30 homers, which we haven't seen yet from him. He had 23 homers a couple years ago, or 27, excuse me, yeah, which is good. But that was an 800 OPS. Do I think he's going to OPS 800 again? Not really. If he OPS is 730, that's still pretty solid. That's a worthy guy to have in your lineup. That's the argument I've made for Nootbaar, right? But if Weatherholt comes in and hits 18 homers, but he does it with an 810 OPS, that's where I'll replace, and I'll take that over replacing Donnie, even though I will get more for Donnie in the trade. I think I can get the stuff in the trades that I need from other avenues other than Donnie and still have Donnie while Weatherholt is on the team. Donnie's OPSing 790, Weatherholt's OPSing 810. I'm taking that over and understanding that I'll get less in a trade if I move Gorman. I'll take that iteration over trading Donovan in hopes that, I land the right prospect, because I'm just not sure what they'll get for him. But I think that's how the Cardinals are treating it too, by the way. They'll trade Donovan if they're blown away by the offer, and the offer is transformational for what they're doing in 2027. That's why I think they're on the right track with how they'll handle Donovan. The unknown of it all, though, is a little bit scary as we are 5 days away from the deadline and the rumors start to swirl.
Yeah, Mason Windio. I mean, the current contender would want him if if they would need left-handed power hitting, which a lot of people want, especially a guy who profiles, and you're only to Brendan's point, you're not going to have to give up a lot for Gorman because of where he's been at for his career. So you're it's a potential play, but it's also for the 2026. You're thinking left-handed power off the bench to hit late-handed righties or late-inning righties. What's bad about that?
Yeah, I can see both sides. I agree, though, actually, with Mason Windu. When I talk about Gorman, I'm more talking about November. I don't think that he's traded right now. I don't think that's a move that gets made. I don't think Nootbaar gets traded right now because of the injury. The Dodgers would be the one team that you could see do that because they just did it. Tommy Edman was on the IL when they acquired him, right? He was rehabbing, but he had not come off. And so they're patient. They'll have a pitcher like Glassdown and be like, it's okay if you don't pitch a game until September or October. Like, we're going to make the playoffs. Get Nootbaar for the playoffs. Like, they would do something like that. But with Gorman, I agree with the interpretation. Like, I didn't intend to suggest they're going to move him this week. That was more like big picture. When people are suggesting trade Donnie and do it now, I'm like, no, here's the way I would do it probably in the offseason instead. That was more the way that I was trying to gear that discussion.
One thing you did mention that I want to bring up, because there's another middle infielder that people want to trade that I'm not even going to entertain it, but I do want to say one factor to the Gorman. You mentioned the Gorman back injury and that he's been dealing with it as a young player. I think one factor in trading Nolan Gorman is that now the Cardinals are only leaning on one young player to be their future who has a back injury instead of two. And the idea that two of your young pillars going forward for the next 5-10 years both already have chronic back injuries before they're 25 years old. I would want to avoid that if I was building a team, and I don't want to get rid of Mason Wynn. And so I'd trade Nolan Gorman just for like the peace of mind of the risk factor of having that being two of your biggest name young players both having issues like that. That's not great. I don't want to have that risk just boiling up there every season.
Yeah, and like Mason Wynn is interesting. That's probably the middle infielder that you were saying.
Yep.
We're not talking about moving this guy. And like John Mozeliak's front office, you don't even have to imagine that would never happen. I don't know about Chaim Bloom. Tampa, and again, Chaim Bloom did not run Tampa. He was not the head executive, but he was part of that front office. So we always harken back to that. They would do stuff creatively. They would trade guys before you thought it was time to trade them. But usually it's like they're about to hit ARB, and Mason's not even to that point yet. So, that's probably a non-starter and should be. I mean, I imagine he'd have a ton of value. But it is interesting where you're like, we have a number of guys that we talk about like, well, you can't trade that guy. You can't trade that guy. That's like, we talked about this team being a team that has a lot of good, solid players, but no superstars. And is Mason Wynn going to become a superstar at the plate? I think he'll become a superstar presence, but I don't know if he is a perennial all-star. Like, he'll make some all-star games. I think he can make some all-star games. Is he going to be like Bobby Witt, where it's like every year you roll out of bed and he's in the all-star game? I don't know if that's going to end up being the case there, And so that's why it's like, I agree, don't trade him. Heck no. But, at a certain point, Cardinals fans, this is why they're willing to trade Donnie. They know he's not that superstar that's going to, be an MVP candidate. And so they are willing to sacrifice any and all such players up to a point to potentially get that MVP candidate because they know that they don't have it in the system.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I only see the three rental relievers, Matz, Maton, and Helsley, being dealt. I think the rest of the trades are off-season moves.
I think that's actually the best guess that I've seen so far. Yeah.
So there has been a lot of talk about them buying and selling that classic Cardinals way of sitting on the fence and picking, throwing trash here and picking some new stuff off the other side.
It's not trash. I would do it, but it's not trash in my opinion. It's not the classic Cardinals way of doing it.
Okay, so what is the if that's the move, if the moves out are the relievers, and if we don't think the big move maybe for the right-hand bat is until the future when things are a little bit clearer, what are the small adds to kind of keep things going for 2025 that also benefit you for 2026?
Yeah, so like
what are those deals? Where are you trading from to make those deals happen? Are they part of the return of the relievers? What's your outlook on that?
Yeah, I would, if I'm trading Helsley and Maton, which I think you probably have to do, I'm looking to get. I'm letting teams call me about those guys, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's teams that are going to need those guys, and then I'm going to tell them what's in their system that I like. Ideally, you're consulting Chaim Bloom heavily when it comes to like prospect acquisition. Okay. We've talked about that, but we don't know, right? That's not the way it's necessarily been reported. But I'm doing that, and I'm okay if I just have to kind of take the best stuff that's offered to me, even if it's not going to help me right away, but it's a good prospect or two, top 10 in somebody's system for each of those guys. I'll live with the return of what it ends up being because I just know those guys aren't on the team next year. And like if you want them on the team next year, you can sign them. Like they'll go to free agency and you bring it back. Like with Maton, that'd be fine. With Helsley, I just don't see them spending the term that it's going to take to get Helsley in free agency. Would love to see him back. He wants to be back. I just don't think it's going to happen. So I'm operating in that reality. Matz, I don't have to trade Matz because again, I think there is value to trying to be as competitive as I can down the stretch. When I call up Granillo, who's here, Graceffo, who would be back if you made such trades. And then whether it's, I know Ryan Fernandez, people don't like when I say his name, Roy Croft, whatever. Swanson would be another guy you could call up. You could call up Graceffo and Swanson. Granillo's already here, and you roll it out. And like, do you lose one of the two games the last two nights if that's your back into your bullpen instead of the guys you're trading? Yeah, probably. You might lose them both, but you also might win. Those guys have shown to be capable at times. Granillo, we've liked what we've seen from him. He's been clutch. Swanson hasn't been asked to pitch in those roles, but what if he was? And it worked. Like, those things play out to me. Matz is the one where you go, if I'm not getting Reed Detmers or somebody like him, who is a reliever, but he also could extend out in innings if I needed it down the stretch, like Matz does provide you that ability to reach back for some more innings if Michaelis falls off a cliff or if somebody gets hurt from your rotation.
I mean, you just need innings already. I mean, we're seeing already, they signed Wilkerson. He pitched well at Memphis. And I think the plan, is should they trade everybody?
Pay attention to that. Yep.
They're going to need arms because Palante and Liberatore aren't making every start. And I'm not sure if the plan is going to be a 6-man rotation and those guys just get more time between starts, or if it's going to be replacement starts like we saw with Liberatore this past week. That way they get full weeks and then they can fully stagger the innings out. Or maybe it's just, to your point, you start putting an innings cap and say Matthew Liberatore's pitching, he's not pitching more than like 75 pitches. And then Matz is even more important because you're using him more consistently in the long relief to eat up Liberatore and Palante's back ends of their starts. But that's a tangible thing that's going to happen because those pitchers have to, they have to be delicate with them, but they also have to continue ramping them up because they need to be 180, 100, 200 borderline innings pitchers for 2026. Because as you've talked about a lot, if you don't have Liberatore and Palante, I don't know where else you're getting arms at the top of your rotation for 2026. So those guys being locked in, those guys being worked up the way they are, that's important. And that's why all these pitcher arms matter.
So that's a reason I'm open to keeping Matz. And some would say, hey, talk to him and bring him back if he's cool with a similar role and you pay him well. I don't really see that, but
he loves the Green River Greenway. He loves that bike trail. I mean, he absolutely he loves the trails over in St. Charles. Big fan of the Katy Trail. So yeah, I think he'd be fine.
And he might even sign a discount deal for it because he likes the trails so much. So we'll see about that. But and look, if I don't know what they're getting offered for Matz, but if they're getting offered for Matz something that they go, oh yeah, I would have kept him for innings, but Matt Rocchio can throw innings. Like if they get to a point where it's just such a great offer that you have to take it for a guy that you didn't think would have such value, then you do it. But I'm okay with keeping him. Romero, I would be more apt to trade him than the Cardinals seem to be because I know they're getting calls on him. And he's got another year of team control attached, but the value's not. That's an example of value's probably not ever going to be higher. Yeah, to Bo's point, like you're really tanking if you don't have him because John King, well, he is walking through that door, and that's maybe the problem. But another reason that you maybe keep Matz, right? If you move Romero, because Romero probably has more value than Matz. And so would you be willing to stomach that possibility? I think that's something they should consider. But this was like to the question of what should they do? I'm serious. Go get Reed Detmers. Go call Tampa about Taj Bradley. And now that, look, it's not the same. I'm not saying you'll win just as many games as you would with JoJo Maton Helsley. But if you bring in some pieces and maybe one of them is a pitcher who by February shows up with hopes that he could pitch in the big leagues, prospect wise, it doesn't have to be guys that are at AA. But maybe it is, and that's okay too. If that's the best you can get for those guys, I would consider those things. Yeah, he's younger. JoJo might be younger, but he's got 1 year left of control. You're gonna have to re-sign him. It's gonna be the same conversation as Helsley. He won't make as much as Helsley in free agency, but teams value what JoJo Romero brings. So I think he's working his way toward a real contract at the end of 2026. So that's why I would be willing to listen if people are aggressively pursuing him and asking about him. Yeah, I would make that move. But I'm doing the buy/sell means I'm also getting Reed Detmers, right? He's somebody that's going to be in my JoJo role now for the rest of the season. He's controllable for 3 more years. And in February, I've got my pitching staff, Dusty Blake and company, trying to put him back into a rotation, even though last year he kind of flamed out as a starter. Taj Bradley, and why with Detmers? Strikeout stuff, swing and miss. Taj Bradley, same thing. Yeah, he's not performing well right now, but he's 24, 25 years old with potential, was a high prospect. Strikeout stuff. You're trying to figure out a way to get that in your organization short of drafting at number 5 every year. What are the ways that you can get that in your organization in bulk? Well, go get those guys. Could it cost you from a Burleson or a Newpart or a Gorman? Yeah, and that's why I said it's hard to do what I'm advocating because 2 of the 3 guys I just named are on the IL. So you don't know what teams are really going to think of them. But if it's teams like the Angels, maybe we don't have Newpart for August, but we have him for 2026 and 2027. maybe that's something we need. Same thing with the Dodgers. So those are the types of things I would be doing. I would be trading from short-term depth. Whatever I get. Move from my surplus to try to get some pitching that's controllable that could help me down the stretch this year, even if it's 80% of what Ryan Helsley and Maton bring. But also, I have an eye on guys that I think could be plugged into a rotation next year.
One of the things you're talking about, trading from depth, do you think there's anybody in the minors right now that could be included in a deal that has value to other teams like a Nathan Church and things like that? I know it's a name people keep throwing out. I don't know how to feel about him because his numbers are just so just drastic this year compared to what they were last year. And so I don't know what other teams are going to think about him. I have no idea historically, over the last 5-10 years, how we've seen teams trade for guys who are 24 years old, who have one huge year and it's only a half year.
They weren't prospects and then they break out, right?
Yes. What is the history of those guys getting value in this part of the season?
Yeah, a lesser guy that's an example of this, Cam Devaney was with the Royals. He's like 28, 29, though. So like even more on the not a prospect train. And they traded him this year. They called him up and he never got an at-bat. And then they traded him for Adam Frazier, who is somebody they had previously. That was like a rental who's a light-hitting utility guy. So not super valuable, but for them, they said, we know what he is, and we'd like to get him back into our clubhouse. Let's do this, right? Nathan Church, I feel like, would be on another plane, not quite to like the top prospect plane, but would there be a team that goes, take a chance on him? Like the Cardinals aren't in position to buy a rental, but would you be able to get Harrison Bader for Nathan Church? I think that's reasonable, but Bader's on an expiring contract, so you're not really looking to do that. But could you package him? Could you package a Nathan Church into something else where, hey, there's this big league player that is on the injured list, but he's proven he's not a star, but he's a good player, and you can't have him right now. But we're also going to give you Nathan Church. That's where the Angels type of team could fit in. Or, if you thought about teams like that aren't in the race per se, they could go, well, I mean, Gorman, Nootbaar, those guys are controllable for 2 years. Nathan Church is controllable for a bunch of years, and we could plug him into our outfield right now. We've got a hole. Let's put him in there and just see what happens for 2 months. Like, you could do stuff like that. The pitching, though, is normally where teams are going to look in your system. And, that's what I don't know. The Cardinals don't have those guys that they're able to move. Like, I'm looking at their
trading from injured players. Jesus.
Yeah, Matthews is not technically on the IL. Roby is, Hence is, Jerpy is. You have to go down to number 11 on Pipeline to find Eshawn Henderson as the first pitcher that's not, having some injury issues this season. And I don't know that you're necessarily trying to trade Eshawn Henderson. You like the progression that he's having. But again, if you're getting Taj Bradley, I'm starting to throw guys like that into the conversation. Hansel Rincon is ripping it up at AA. I'm not suggesting that the Cardinals should dump these guys. No, I would like to see them get developed and maybe, make a splash in the big leagues. Nathan Church is ranked 16th on the Pipeline list for the Cardinals. Bryson Motts is another lefty at AA that's having a good season. Like, I would trade from the AA rotation if I'm getting Taj Bradley. Like, I'm giving them Burleson or I'm giving them Nootbaar, whichever player the Rays want, but I'm also adding in those types of pitchers that I think, they could have a future, but I'm going to try Taj Bradley out, and that's why I'm doing this package. Somebody mentions the catchers. Yeah, I would trade a catcher prospect without blinking, and you can almost pick which one. Not because I don't believe those guys are going to emerge. Like, I'd like to hold on to Bernal. I think he's maybe got the highest ceiling of to be a complete stud.
On that one.
Raniel Rodriguez is low in a lower level. He's only 18 years old, but it's going to be probably 3 or 4 years before he comes up. I would hate to trade him, but if I'm getting a stud back, I would trade top prospects actually, but specifically it would be catchers and then that second layer of pitchers like the AA tier. But I'm only doing that if it's not a short-term buy. I'm setting up my rotation for 2026. I'm getting a guy that I know is locked in as my number 3 or better next year. Or die trying, those are the types of moves that, you could technically buy, in my opinion. It just would have to be under those specific guidelines.
All right, another move you can make is with our friends at DraftKings and our promo code STL Sports. Nothing beats relaxing on a hot summer day, and until Thursday, it's going to be hot summer days in St. Louis, and then we get a break, mercifully. But until then, every day in St. Louis is a hot summer day, so there's nothing that's going to be relaxing today on a Saturday than sitting down and watching baseball. And the simplest way to get in on the action is to download the Pick Six app from our friends at DraftKings. It's crazy simple. You can just pick more or less on the stats for 2 or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. When you look at the Cardinals game today, I think right now with the way they're hitting against these Padres teams, I say keep going. Let's go with, I'm thinking Brendan Donovan. If everyone wants to trade him, I say he has a big game. We're going to go with more on the hits, runs, and RBI from Brendan Donovan. And also the Cardinals, those low strikeout numbers seem to be trailing the other way for the Cardinals over the last few games. So I'm going to guess we're going to go with more on the starting pitching for the Padres, whichever one it is. Honestly, you don't even need to tell me who the pitcher is. Whoever it is, take more on their strikeouts on your DraftKings Pick Six. That's just your start, by the way. You can pick anywhere from 2 to 6 players. So start with those 2 and pick it all the way up to 6. Pick Six is available right here in Missouri. That's my app because I'm putting in my order right now. Don't miss out on the fun and do not settle for a smaller playout. Switch to Pick Six. And right now, new customers can get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Download the DraftKings Pick Six app now and use code STL Sports. That's the code on your screen, STL Sports, for new customers to get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick Six from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick Six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick Six credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos.
You know what? I'm going to feel pretty good about that one. The Cardinals going up against Randy Vasquez tonight for the Padres, the righty. So I'm still, I have a feeling they might get some runs on him, but I'm feeling pretty good about that strikeout total here because they be whiffing a little bit lately, Brenden Schaeffer.
They be whiffing, he says. I not a big strikeout guy, though. We'll see. We shall see.
I'm going to roll with it. I've expended all of my trade thoughts. I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat. You guys killed it today. We traded pretty much, I think, about half the roster throughout today's show.
No, wait a
Good
second.
Good job.
We didn't trade half the roster. Look, it's one of those deals where we don't know. We don't know who the teams are calling about and who the teams have interest in, but the Cardinals have an archetype of player. They have a lot of those left-handed hitting corner outfielders. They are projecting to add a left-handed bat at some position next year in Weatherhold. And so it would be very clear to me that that would be a position of strength of surplus that you could move from. But, like, I'm not trading Burleson and Gorman and Nootbaar and Donovan. You know what I mean? Like, it
wasn't all in one trade. It was just progressively throughout the show.
Yeah, I think you let the teams guide the decision from that crop. Which one's going to be that coalescence of providing you the most value while also clearing a spot in a way that doesn't make you demonstrably worse. Because if you're trading Donovan, you're going to get worse because he's your best player. And you can do that if you're getting a package that's just out of this world. But if you're not, I'm okay with less of a return, whether it comes now or in November, when I trade one of those left-handed hitting outfielders, and I'll put Gorman in that conversation, because I do have to clear a spot. And I do think that next year's roster, even though people are like, can't contend, can't win next year, they're going to they're on pace for another winning season. They're second in a row, probably short of the playoffs both times. But like that tells you, let the next guy come in, make a couple of these targeted moves that we're talking about. Trust the pitching people you brought in so that it's not like this rebuild, because right now it feels like they have no pitching. You're like, oh my gosh, Fetty, Michaelis, this is what we're dealing with. Yeah, sure. But could you quickly trade for players that step into that role, and then a year later, when hopefully your development streamline gets Quinn Matthews up here and maybe Tink Hence if he's a reliever or whatever it needs to be. Like, I think 26, 27 can be really good building block years. You don't have to lose 95 to 100 games in those years, in my opinion, which is why you're allowed to spend a little bit of money. Like, I don't think they're going to make a big splash in free agency, but if this offseason looks something like spending money on a Donovan extension, a Mason Wynn extension, and a Victor Scott extension to tell the fan base, like, this is going to be kind of part of our core. It's not going to be a ton of money. I would be for doing things like that while also trading for my surplus of offensive players, packaged with prospects that are arms, because teams always want arms, to get the arms that are closer to a rival to the big leagues, try to fix them if they're broken, and then go in 2026 and see what happens.
To Joseph Polasher's point, I don't agree with including Palante in any of these trades because, to Brendan's point, you need pitchers for 2026, and Andre Palante is going to be one of your starting pitchers for 2026 unless something terrible happens, and just kind of accept that now, and it'll get easier.
Unless you can get some really good, again, if we're giving the Cardinals Detmers and Josh Bradley, like that's 2/5 of their rotation next year. Then you go, okay, Palante's maybe expendable, but I also don't think he has a lot of value. So again, Cardinals fans often say, trade this guy. And what that means is I hate him and I don't want him to be on my baseball team anymore. A lot of times, though, you have to trade the guys that other teams actually value too. And that's where that line gets drawn, and it can be tough.
6:15 tonight at Busch Stadium. It's Randy Vasquez, the righty, 3.73 ERA, 3-4 on the season, facing off against Matthew Liberatore, the lefty for the Cardinals, 6-7 with a 4.13 ERA. Lineups aren't out just yet, but before we close off this show, as we are looking to Game 3 of Game 4, I did want to throw this up for everybody because Brenden Schaeffer has been having a little fun on the X. If the Cardinals sweep this Padres series in 4 straight, would you still want them to sell? This is from my profile's perspective, so you can see where I voted. This is where the fandom of Brenden Schaeffer came down on the question. So they go into Game 3. Just your thoughts overall, just if we are talking about the Cardinals sweeping the Padres on Sunday evening, do you think the fans have the right of it? Do they still sell?
Yeah, I think
especially
it's a lot.
I'll give you actually very strict parameters. If they sweep the Padres and they are half game lead in the third wild card, do they sell both Helsley and Maton?
I don't care what the Giants and Reds do in the next 2 days. Like I'll just take it. If they sweep them, they're ahead of the Padres. That's something. They'll still sell. I think they might not sell as aggressively. I think that, yes, like one series could cause them to shift because it's a 4-game series that you win for instead of losing for. I mean, I do that. That's a chunk of your season that is meaningful. So should they let one series change their minds? Maybe not to a significant extent, but I'm not going to say what I want to say.
No, come on.
You say, let me think of the way to phrase it. I think the fan base is a little too eager to be like, yes, my brain has been melted by this idea of tanking is cool and losing is cool. Sometimes winning is kind of fun. Like, and again, I don't believe what we're talking about here, which would be, rather than trade away Helsley and Maton, instead you kind of maybe only trade one of them or you just hold them and see what happens. Like, you're not talking about transformational stuff anyway. You're getting a couple nice prospects and that's about it. You're not probably trading away any bigger, like a Donovan or anybody else anyway, unless you get a call that you're not expecting. And so it's not like whatever they choose to do is not necessarily transformational. So like if they don't sell, they've admitted that they're going for it next year. Or if they do sell, they've admitted that they can't win for 3 years. No, there's a business proposition with strict parameters that it makes sense to exact resources, get these resources coming in for expiring assets. That doesn't have to be this big referendum on what 26, 27, or 28 is going to be in either direction. So like they could hold and still say next year's not going to be our year, but like keep in context what you're going to get back for these players. You're going to get back a prospect or two for each that's a nice player. But remember the 2023 deadline. Like it was Sajasi, who's not really contributed yet, Tekoa Roby, who hasn't, and we're hoping, gets healthy and gets to that level. It's John King, who's been like an ancillary piece in your bullpen. It's Cesar Prieto that we've never seen. It's Zach Showalter that we've never seen, right? So like that deadline happened, and there hasn't been a ton that really has been, you've gotten things here and there from that deadline that have helped you. But largely that was like, yeah, you sold because you had to, because those were expiring assets and you weren't going to win. Well, this year, they're not 13 games below 500. They still could conceivably win. So you don't even have to be as aggressive with the sell, in my opinion, as you were in 2023. And even that aggressive deadline didn't net you. Really, Matt Swanson, I guess, would be the biggest. Who am I forgetting from that deadline with the Rangers and the Orioles and the Blue Jays trades?
Robertson,
that has
CD-ROM?
Robertson has not done.
Yeah.
He's hurt. Rom is not. So like largely that wasn't a transformational deadline, even though we were like, oh, idealistically, like in the way I view the Cardinals organization and philosophically, you have to sell right now because you're not going to win. Totally. That's a value proposition, but it didn't transform anything about their timeline. So don't don't make grand sweeping generalizations about what happens at the deadline and say this means that they think X, Y, or Z about 2027. No, it doesn't. It just means that they're in a moment where they have a decision to make, a bit of a fork in the road, and they'll approach it thusly. But the guy that's running 2026 and 2027 isn't even running this deadline. So I don't think that whatever happens here, but that's our nature, is to look at things and go, well, this happened, so now I have formed my opinion over what's coming for 2 more years. And then it's like, that probably has very little to do with what's coming for 2 more years. Now, November, December, that trade period, really different story. That could have a lot of impact. And then that free agency. Do you sign anyone? Do you sign one Maton level player? Do you sign 5 Maton level players trying to just kind of do it on the cheap, but at least say, hey, we're going to give a level best to contending in 2026? Or do you make a huge splash? Like, they're not going to do the last thing, but what they do is going to sort of determine more about 2026 than what they do this week.
Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting weekend into this next week. Again, the trade deadline is 5 days away. Cardinals game 3 of 4 against the Padres tonight, 6:15 at Busch Stadium. We will be right here. Oh, good Lord Almighty. We will be back here on tonight for an STL Cards or STL Cards Central post-game show, probably just after 9 o'clock. We will also have a City post-game show. Come on later on from that. I'll be on that. Are you on post-game tonight, B-Shafe?
No.
You're not on post-game, so you'll
I'm going to a bowling tournament this weekend. I got stuff to do, baby.
Of course you are. He's got a role, and we respect that even on Shabbos. Brenden Schaeffer, thank you so much for joining me today. Again, I'll be on City postgame. We'll have 2 perfect hosts on for Cards Central postgame coming up later on today after the Cards play at 6:15. This has been STL Sports Central. This has been Cards Central 365, brought to you by Gray Bar and our good friends at DraftKings Sportsbook, where the crown is yours. That's Brenden Schaeffer. I'm Matthew Rocchio. Make sure you hit like, share, subscribe, hit the bell button so you'll be notified whenever we go live. This has been STL Sports Central. Have a great rest of your afternoon, St. Louis.